This is Down the Aisle Wrestling Podcast, where we only make one promise. We will always reach for that.
Crash Raymond.
With Robbie Mack and Kevin Laramie. Here's Kevin Laramie. And welcome to Down the Aisle Wrestling Podcast. A great, momentous day for us, Rob. How you doing, first of all?
I'm doing pretty good, Kevin. Not liking, we got hit with a snowstorm here last night.
It's minus 40 in Montreal right now, so yeah.
Yeah, we got about 25 centimeters of snow. Yeah, it was, other than that, it wasn't very good. It wasn't great, super going out watching weather, you know what I mean?
Yeah, do you know who else did we talk about weather with today? You know, we actually talk about weather with a freaking Hall of Famer.
A beast, if you will.
A beast. The original beast.
Not the beast incarnate.
No, the original beast.
The beast, yes.
Today on the show, Dan the Beast Severn. We talked for almost half an hour about, well, basically everything, Rob.
Yeah, no, he was a really cool guy. He was very receptive to all our questions. He basically told us that we could ask whatever we liked. And, we only had a limited amount of time with Dan, so we tried to get what we wanted into as much as possible. We talked about some MMA. We talked about some amateur wrestling. We obviously talked about some pro wrestling.
Yeah. And I think without further ado, here's Dan the Beast Severn. Joining us today on Down the Aisle Wrestling Podcast, a UFC Hall of Famer, the only Triple Crown winner of the Ultimate Champion, Super Fight Champion, and UFC tournament winner, Dan the Beast Severn joins us today. Dan, how you doing today?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. I'm actually out in Phoenix, Arizona, so the sun is shining. I would not be wearing the same outfit back in the state of Michigan without freezing.
Well, in Montreal right now, it's minus 40 degrees Celsius, so I wish I was with you in Arizona, I can say.
Yeah, I trust me. Just talking to some of my family members back in Michigan, they just got hit between, a foot and a half to almost 2 foot of snow in the last 24 hours. And I might go on, gee, I wish I could be there, not.
Exactly. The one thing I want to start with talk to you about, Dan, is I was reading a lot on you the last couple of days getting ready for this interview, and a story really caught my attention. In the mid-'80s at the U.S. national trials for the Olympics, you lost at the final, a controversial loss that changed your whole perspective and your whole career. Can you explain to us how the controversy be in that match and how it changed your career?
Well, I think the first way how it changed my career, you and I probably would not be conversing here today because I would have retired back in 1984 had everything gone the way it should have gone for me. My background has been heavily involved in the sport of amateur wrestling. So I've been involved in the sport since 1969. I won my first national title in 1972. So my goal was I always wanted to win the Olympic gold medal. And my first Olympic trials, I tried out in 1976 and kept repeating every 4 years, looking for that cycle. And literally, I had tried out for the 76, 80, 84, 88, and 1992 was my last hurrah trying out for it before basically old age was setting on in. So I just tell people that I should have been the Olympic representative. I should have been the guy to have won the Olympic gold medal. But instead, I had to watch the person ahead of me win the gold medal without giving up a single point. And everybody who he went against, I had pinned in underneath 1 minute. So it would have been one of the easiest gold medals in the world for me to have won. And so I always just tell people that that incidents right there basically inspired me. I'm not sure if I might use that as my word, but I will use that. Was my inspiration to pursue
you had in MMA beginning, you're a pioneer, you're a legend in this sport. You were there at the early beginning. UFC 5 was probably the one that caught my attention. Being 11 years old in 1995, watching this VHS tape that I found in my video store and figuring out that they finally did the tournament of all the tournaments that I wanted to see. And it had the occasion to be number 5 because I missed it first. It was the first one I've seen. So you really caught my attention when I was a kid. And watching you, I was a wrestling fan too, watching you step into the octagon looking like a guy I'm used to watching on wrestling, just became a big fan. And that night really sparked my imagination, because winning a tournament, fighting 3 different times in one night, it must have been something out of this world. Can you explain to us the mindset you had when you stepped into the octagon the first time that night?
Well, I'll tell you what, again, for your listeners, just to kind of educate them a little bit, because I'll say people in the States are definitely a whole lot more forgetful than other countries. Half the time when I say that I do these interviews, I'm being an educator at the same time, just to tell people what the background is, because most are familiar with mixed martial arts, but that term really did not become coined until, I'd say, around the middle 2000s, sometime around that 2005, 2006, was mixed martial arts, the term given to this cage fighting industry. And the product mixed martial arts today has approximately 37 rules. Part of those 37 rules are there's weight classes, time periods known as rounds, weight classes, and you fight one opponent in a given evening. Back in the NHB, otherwise known as No Rules Barred era, there were only 2 rules. Those being, do not bite your opponent. Rule number 2, do not stick fingers in their eye sockets, otherwise known as no eye gouging. End of the rules. And people would say, well, no, you can't do this or you can't do that. Yeah, you could. That's where people couldn't believe that you could actually pull someone's hair, you could grab their clothing, you could knee them in the groin. I mean, it's just, as long as you didn't bite someone or stick a finger in an eye socket, you're good to go. No weight classes, no time period, bare-knuckled action, and it was an 8-man tournament. Just like you said, you had to face and defeat 3 opponents in the same 2-hour pay-per-view that they run today. You had to go through an 8-man tournament. So that was just a whole different raw type of format. So I guess with all that said right now, what was actually your actual question?
Just wondering your mindset going to the octagon when you first fought that night against people of different sports, of different backgrounds, because back then every single competitor had a different background.
Sure.
They were dubbed the wrestlers. Some of them were boxers. Some of them, if you're our gentlemen, were boxers with one boxing gloves. So,
Jiu-jitsu, sambo practitioners, yeah. Everyone knows. I say that most everyone, including myself, was a one-dimensional athlete. You just brought just really one discipline to the cage. So literally, what was my mindset? I think that my amateur wrestling career prepared me quite well. I mean, I did have the opportunity to watch the very first 2 UFC events. A friend of mine, I didn't watch them live on a pay-per-view. A friend of mine who watched the first 2, he copied them on an old VHS tape, and he brought it over to me, and he said, hey, you ought to think about doing this. And, there I'm seeing people getting sucker kicked in the face, and teeth are flying out, and I'm like, these are not exactly skills I possess. But then when he pointed out, he goes, well, look at the skinny guy doing jiu-jitsu. Of course, he was referred to Hoist Gracie, and I had never really been exposed to jiu-jitsu, so I thought, well, it kind of looks like wrestling to me. I figured that if a guy is close enough to throw down, I'll either move out of range or get closer or clinch so that they can't get any kind of real velocity on it in the first place. And that little tidbit really there served me quite well over the next couple decades. walking into there, I really didn't think about anything. I had trained for all of 5 days, an hour and a half a day, for the preparation of a no-holds-barred match. But I did not train a single strike. I did not train a single legitimate submission. Unlike today, where you can find a cage in almost any community, because we have these mixed martial arts gyms that have either a cage or a section of fence that athletes can train against or with. The closest thing I could come up with was a professional wrestling ring. So from Coldwater, Michigan, I traveled over to Lima, Ohio with Al Snow and a couple of our other professional wrestling proteges. And they had one old pair of boxing gloves between the three of them. They simply just were trying to punch, kick, and do whatever crude type submissions that they could. And when one would get tired, they would give the gloves to the next guy, and I just stayed out the entire time until I was tired, and then I'd take a break, and then we'd just do it again. But I never trained a single legitimate strike, never trained a single legitimate submission. So when I walked into the cage for the first time, I was asked what was my martial art, and I just simply said to them, I'm an American wrestler, and they kind of looked at me like, well, what's that going to do for you? And I go, I'm not sure. I guess watch and find out.
Well, Dan, I'm going on a limb to say that it really did work out for you as far as being a legitimate wrestler. And speaking of wrestling, I want to fast forward a bit to 1995 when you entered Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and you were working with Jim Cornette, which eventually led to you transitioning into the WWE, the WWF at that time. Can you tell our listeners exactly how that transition happened? Did Vince contact you, or did Jim Cornette kind of go to Vince on your behalf? How exactly did you find yourself all of a sudden fighting in Smoky Mountain Wrestling? You're the NWA champion, and then you're in the hottest era of professional wrestling as far as the WWF went.
Well, I mean, my first profession was professional wrestling. I started training professional wrestling as of the 1992 Olympics. Once that was done, I started, a new rule came down from the United States Olympic Committee that allowed athletes to be both amateur and professional simultaneously. Prior to that, had I turned pro, I would have lost my amateur status and would have been ineligible to compete anymore. So my amateur wrestling career meant a great deal to me. So I stayed amateur up until 92, jumped into doing professional wrestling then. And then by 1994, the cage fighting stuff started emerging. And then I just had a dual career since that time.
So kind of like a modern-day Deion Sanders.
Well, yeah. I mean, you see there's a lot of these guys that are right now in either mixed martial arts or professional wrestling that are trying to cross back and forth right now. You've got Brock Lesnar, you've got CM Punk, you've got, Kurt Angle was talking about it. You have Tito Ortiz that's bounced back and forth. You have, there's still probably half a dozen other guys that I'm just missing their names right offhand that
Del
are
Rio was talking about it.
in both. Go ahead.
Alberto Del Rio is talking about it as well, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's a number of other guys there too. I mean, I'd say that Brock Lesnar is probably one of the more notable names here right now in the current. There's a couple of people even in. I'm just drawing some blanks here on some names.
Oh no worries, Dan. After you got to WWF, probably one of the more, I wouldn't say the more memorable things from that tenure, maybe the most infamous things was the Brawl for All. Now, if I remember correctly, you were in the Brawl for All, you beat the Godfather, and then all of a sudden the Godfather was back in the tournament. What exactly happened, and how did the guys backstage take to the WWF Brawl for All?
Well, I mean, I really can't explain too much on that. I mean, it was something that there was a meeting that was called. We were at our show, and I don't remember where we were at the time, but a couple of the road agents simply asked all the talent to come together in the cafeteria. And they're going to have a quick little meeting there, and then this concept of the Brawl for All was being explained, and that everyone was going to be in the Brawl for All except for Ken Shamrock and Dan Severn. And basically, as soon as I more or less heard that, it was kind of like, well, do you need me here anymore? And then they're like, no. And I kind of left the meeting there. But then several weeks into this brawl for all concept, I happened to be in back, just probably relaxing, doing whatever, and one of the road agents came up to me and said, "How would you like to be in the brawl for all tonight?" And I go, I just said, "Well, how much against who?" They gave me the price and the opponent. I go, "Okay." I said, "I don't want to wear the gloves though."
Okay.
And they looked at me, they're like, "Well, you can't go bare knuckle." I go, "Well," I said, I'll never throw a single strike." I said, "But I will show you what a real wrestler is capable of doing." And, I didn't really get my way. They made me wear the gloves. I actually wish I would have just simply walked out to the ring and would have just demanded to have them cut them off, because you got to realize this is live while it's happening. I could have gotten away with it at that point in time, but it's just one of those things where when you can look back at it now and think, well, geez, I wish I would have done it like this instead. But as it was, I mean, I tied the Godfather all up, took him down, but it was difficult when you got these 20-ounce gloves on your gloves, really restricting your ability. Even in my career of cage fighting, I only wore gloves within, let's say, the last, I'll say 10 years or less of my career that I wear gloves. And even then, it was changing state by state to where only twice ever in my career was it mandatory that I had to tape my hands. And I said, well, what's the bare bones minimum that you allow to be called taped hands? And they're like, well, one piece of gauze, one piece of tape. And they were almost being facetious as they said it to me. Well, I put one piece of gauze, one piece of tape wrapped around, and as I'm slipping my gloves on, it's falling off. And these athletic commissioners like, how is that supposed to protect your hands? I go, you don't understand what my skills are. The way that if you have a professional tape job done on your hand, it really restricts your mobility of your hands. I go, I'm not going to win this match because of my striking ability. I'm going to win this match because of my grappling ability. And once I do take people down and put them on their back, or if I'm even underneath them, when I am striking them, most of my strikes are going to be kind of like a hammer type style, to where you're never going to break your hand. The only time that you can break your hand is when you throw out direct type of punches where hitting it onto the knuckles. I mean, I went through my entire cage fighting career and never hurting my hands whatsoever.
Oh. Kevin, I just wanted to quickly ask Dan. Growing up, I was obviously a fan of wrestling, but my favorite wrestler growing up was Owen Hart, and you had a very memorable feud for me with Owen Hart. Would you be able just to tell us a little bit about what your memories were like working with Owen, and if you could wrestle anybody, be it past or present, who do you think you would match up the best with nowadays?
Yep, sorry about that. There was some dogs in the background there. I just had to calm them down for a second.
No problem.
So, to answer your question, I mean, it was, it was an honor and a privilege to have done matches with Owen. And in the beginning, I didn't really know who he was. Mm-hmm. I knew about the Hart family and their legacy in wrestling. So that was, I was aware of that. Now, getting to know Owen, after a while we got to know him. I mean, he had a great sense of humor. He was a great prankster.
Were you ever a victim of any Owen's ribs?
Say again?
Were you ever a victim of any Owen Hart's pranks?
I think he tried to pull a few jokes on me in matches, or tried to break me out of character, make me laugh, or something like this, in the middle of trying to do something serious live out in front of people.
Okay.
So I mean, I was never on the receiving end of a rib, other than simply trying to, make me break character or something like that. That was, something else. The unique part is there to be at the Hart residence while they were shooting the dungeon match between Ken Shamrock and Owen Hart, and I was the guest referee. So, for several hours while they're setting up the lighting, the sound, and all that kind of stuff down there in the basement. Here I am. I'm upstairs, sitting by Father Stu, and just listening to him, just talk about stories and stuff like this. I'm just politely just listening to him, just regale a story, and different people ask him questions and stuff like that. And that was pretty unique. But getting back then to Owen, there was unique things that we could do because of his amateur wrestling background. I could do some more things with him I could not do with a normal professional wrestler. So we could do some things called like pummeling and stuff like this. I could do some legitimate amateur wrestling techniques that he would know how to react to properly and stuff like that. Whereas, most professional wrestlers are just to be so just skilled of doing just one thing, and that's professional wrestling. So, but even as you see now, the influence of mixed martial arts and how several professional wrestlers have included submission techniques or striking type techniques, or they're wearing type parts of the MMA uniform, gloves and things of that nature, or shin pads, kick pads, just so that they're showing that influence from that sector going into the matches. But working with Ken Shamrocks and with Owen Hart and with Steve Blackman, that was kind of like the four of us were involved in a few different things there together.
Dan, if we're looking at your overall career, there's one question that a lot of people ask athlete that did both sports, amateur wrestling and pro wrestling. Compared to fighting and no holds barred or mixed martial art, compared to pro wrestling, which is hardest and which is hardest on your body? Which one was the easiest to do?
Well, I mean, for me, again, my perspective, the professional wrestling was harder for me to do than my shoot career, just because I've been doing my shoot career so many more decades before it. Even though I wasn't doing cage fighting, but being an amateur wrestler since 1969. I won my first national. I started teaching the sport of wrestling in '71. I've won my first national title in '72. So I had so many more decades of experience doing it before by 1992 jumping into it. Prior to that, the mindset that was difficult to me is whether I stepped into a cage, a ring, or on a mat, I had an opponent. Now when I step into the squared circle of professional wrestling, I have a partner. And that was tough for me to do, because now I'm listening for crowd reaction. You're listening to the referee. You're listening to your partner in different ways. So literally, there's just a whole different type of magic that's taking place. Whereas before, I could walk out in front of thousands of people, and I could tune them out. I could tune the referee out to where all I saw on that mat or that ring was an opponent. I'm just really good about going at that little focused line and being there. So I had to learn a different thought process going into it, and even executing the various moves and techniques of things in nature. So many of the guys would say, "Lighten up! You're like the pipe wrench on me." And I'm thinking, "Gee, I am being light on you. I am being loose." But because a lot of these wrestlers would wear like baby oil too on them, so they would make their muscles stand out and glisten. And I'm thinking, how tough it is to hold on to somebody when they've got baby oil onto them, and you're supposed to be responsible for their safety. That is like the most basic rule 101 of professional wrestling: is you protect me and I protect you. But I see more and more there really isn't that honor taking place. It's so selfish, or I should say becoming so much more selfish, where most people look at themselves as an individual and they just look at it, what's in it for me? And the reality is, if you want to have a good professional wrestling match, it's a partnership, but it also includes that referee, because if that referee is not there to do their job, that could screw up the psychology of your match as well.
Absolutely. Before we let you go, Dan, is there anything you would like to promote or talk about? We know you're in Arizona right now training the Arizona State University, the Sun Devil, because you're the original Sun-Kissed kid. How is the season going in ASU?
I mean, they've got a brand new head wrestling coach by the name of Zeke Jones. He'll do really quite a great deal of wonders with Arizona State's team. Again, I just tell people I live my life in thirds. Thirds of the time I'm in Michigan. If people want to know what I have coming on up or what all the things I have done, simply by sharing dansevern.com, my website, dansevern.com, because there's too many things to list. I still very active as I travel around doing seminars and everything from mixed martial arts to submission grappling to amateur wrestling, which is what we do as a folk style sport here in the United States, but then also well versed in the two international styles of freestyle, Greco-Roman. I've been working with law enforcement since '84, corrections since 94, corrections since '95, but I also worked with air marshals, border patrol, and our military. So I'm very excited about the mechanics that I started teaching back in 1971 has translated well over to a lot of different areas of how I'm able to break down technique, demonstrate it to individuals, understand their rules of engagement, and show them and make them a better widget. Just within the last 4 months, I was approached by the sheriff's department here in Arizona. And one of the commanders said, could you touch base with me? And he said, Dan, what do you know about cell extractions? You know, when they had to remove a prisoner from their cell. And I just said, well, I've watched the reality show Lockdown a couple of times where he kind of laughed. He says, well, it doesn't exactly happen like that. And I said, well, just bring me on in. I said, let me watch all aspects of it and let me participate in all aspects of it so I can see what happens if you're the guy that's coming in to get the bad guy. And I go, then let me be the bad guy so I can experience it on all aspects of it on top of just viewing it all. And literally, I came up with half a dozen drills for them to do and new ways of doing techniques, of which one, just dealing with the bad guy's legs alone, will probably revolutionize that sector. So again, I'm happy knowing that stuff that I have taken from my amateur wrestling career, professional wrestling career, my cage fighting career, and have been able to combine it all together to where it's what continues to keep me out there and continues to keep me employed as well.
Fascinating. UFC Hall of Famer Dan Severn, we can't thank you enough for being on the show today.
Well, just touch base with me in another 6 months, and we'll give you the next update. How's that?
Sounds perfect. Thank you very much, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Yep, bye.
Wow, that was a great interview. And on top of it, we didn't get him mad. So if we see him, we're not going to get suplexed, Rob.
No, that's great news, Kevin. I think we're friends with Dan the Beast Severn now. I think we're good. He liked us.
Did you say we're friends with Dan Severn? I just got chills.
Yeah, we're fans with UFC Hall of Famer Dan the Beast Severn.
And if you fuck with us, he got our back. Did you hear that?
Yeah, we just got to fly him up from Arizona or drive him up from Michigan and...
That's close to your neck of the woods, but for me it's a little further. But Dan the Beast Severn, what a guy. What an interview. I said a little bit in the interview, Rob, how the first introduction I had to him was probably 96 by the time I got that VHS tape, but the UFC 5 VHS tape. I'll just tell you the story quickly to our listener. I was 11 years old, big wrestling fan, but huge huge karate, movie, Van Damme type, Bruce Lee type of fan. And there's always a type of tournament in those movies, the Kumite, or the tournament of the best, or the ace of the ace. And when I first saw the cover of that UFC 5 VHS tape, I thought to myself, they finally did that tournament. And then I started watching it, and behold, a pro wrestler walks into the octagon. I just lost my shit. He became my hero. And over the years, he probably amassed like, what, hundreds of belts. I just fell in love with that guy back then, Rob.
It's and for me, my introduction to Dan Severn was a little bit differently. I never really followed MMA back in the day. I don't really I follow it nowadays, but probably not to the extent of some people do. For me, my introduction to Dan Severn is when he came into WWF, and over the last few days, I've been watching a lot of matches of his on the WWE Network and on YouTube. And looking back on it, I don't think I did Dan Severn as much as a worker as I did looking back now with him, because he had a brief run in WWF about 8 months. I think his last appearance was in '99 Royal Rumble. Don't quote me on that, but I don't know for sure. But I would have loved to see Dan Severn. Can you imagine the matches he would have had with I know he touched upon with Owen Hart a bit, and how he worked with Owen and Blackman and Shamrock. But yeah, can you imagine the matches he could have had with Brock? How he could have had with
Ziggler has an amateur.
Rollins, Kurt Angle. Can you imagine
Kurt Angle? Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's why, and that's another great reason why the WWE Network is so great, because you're like, I didn't really appreciate this at the time. I don't want to say not appreciate it, but not really think too much as I do now. You know what I mean?
And one thing that now in hindsight we realize how smart he was. He talked about it in a lot of different interviews, Rob, and I'll explain to you the story of how sometimes back then he was not talked bad about, but sometimes some people were saying that, oh, look, he taps, he doesn't take punishment when he gets hit too much, he taps before the referee stops it. He's smart. He's at the end of his 50s, and he has still his wits. He's not punch drunk. He can still talk properly because he didn't take the amount of punishment that other competitors like a Chuck Liddell or other type of performers did back then. And he really took care of himself better that way. Did not get hit that many amount of time in his career. Really protected his face, protected his hand. He talked about how he didn't break his hands a lot of time, and for a fighter, that's pretty rare. But he was smart about it. And in hindsight now, with all the concussion problems we see in football and hockey, and the beginning of it in mixed martial art eventually too, now with those big lawsuit against the UFC coming in effect as well now. So it's very interesting to see how smart he approached the sport even back then.
And not only that, Kevin, and just the feeling I get, because he planned for it, he's very, very smart financially. Like he saved his money. He invested in things. He has other businesses. Dan Severn. He was just a smart guy, and it's nice to see that from athletes.
Absolutely. Now he owns the Michigan Sports Camps Training Facility. So if you're in the area of Coldwater, Michigan, his stomping ground, literally, you can go train both wrestling, pro wrestling, amateur wrestling, any type of catch as cash can, whatever he wants to show you there too. Michigan Sports Camps Training Facility. Get all the information on his website, and it's easy to remember, dansevern.com.
And it was a fun thing. Before we go out here, Kevin, just really quick, what did you think of the Super Bowl last night?
Loved every second of it because the right team won for once.
It's just if you were a Seahawks fan, how much would you hate Pete Carroll today?
Hey, he's Mr. Positive, but you know what? The funniest thing is we never learned from history. And if you go back in the history of Pete Carroll, back when he was coaching USC, I think. Southern California. Well, he did the same thing against Texas. And it happened more than once where at the 1 yard line, for some reason, he seems to always fall in love with a passing play.
But you got the best running back in the league, and you're half a yard in, and it's second. I don't know.
No, there was a stats out there, Rob, that in the postseason, at the 1 yard line, Marshawn Lynch is only 1-4. That's only 25%. Can you risk your Super Bowl on that?
Of course, you had 2 downs to get it.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just playing that devil's advocate. I agree with you. It's the stupidest play of Pete Carroll's life.
But I mean, I guess at the end of the day, if he made if it wasn't intercepted, we'd be talking about how great of a tactician Pete Carroll was. And I just hope it's not his legacy, because Pete Carroll is a good coach.
He is. It's not the football podcast. If you want to hear more about the football right now, listen to tomorrow's Five Rings podcast, where we'll touch upon sports that are only played in one country, i.e., when you're a world champion and you only play in one country, are you really a world champion? We'll talk about that on the Five Rings podcast with a piece of the Dan Severn interview where we touch about amateur wrestling and pro fighting. That will be on tomorrow's Five Rings podcast, so listen to this too. And until then, Rob, you know what?
What's that, Kevin?
As Dan Severn did for many, many years, take that bump.
I'm on a roll, baby, 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 baby. I'm on a roll, baby, 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 baby. I'm on a roll, baby, 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 baby. I'm on a roll, baby, 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 baby. I'm like a steamroller. And when a steamroller's got momentum going, well, get out of the way. Get out of my way, people. Get out of my way, people. Get out of my way, people. Get out of my way, people.